And, as we looked ahead, our forecast showed, an expected growth in demand this summer. Potentially, we could see demand upwards of above 80,000. We forecasted a potential one model could be upwards of around 83,000. So we do expect demand to be growing. We've seen additional resources come onto the grid, and so we expect to leverage all of those resources and optimize them to the best possible. But with this, we want to really just open up a new channel and a new tool to be able to communicate to the public and help give them insights as to what's going on the grid and what are the grid conditions, so that if anything were to change, we have channels that we can communicate to them and be open and clear about what's going on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Yeah, hi, Ron Trevino from KHOU in Houston. How are you?
Good morning, Ron.
Okay, my question is, when you're talking about voluntary conservation, has there been any attempt to incentivize this for Texans, even monetarily, or for future energy bills, anything like that?
Yes, so there are actually tools that many of the retailers across the state of Texas offer to their customers to be able to respond to conservation or demand response programs, as they're referred to. Those are facilitated and offered and incentivized directly through a customer's retail electric provider. That's not something that ERCOT does directly. We do have additional part of our reserve services include some high-level demand response programs that are targeted for aggregated large customer groups. And so those are services that we do pay for and use and are part of our suite of tools that we use to help manage reliability. And so what this voluntary conservation request is just a general ask if it's reasonable and safe to do so at a point in time or for a set of specific hours. If folks can pull back a little bit on using energy during that time, it would be helpful for the grid. But it's, again, not indicative that we expect to be in emergency conditions, but it is something that would help us prevent that. And so we want to make people aware of kind of where we are, and if they can help out, this is a tool that is commonly used across a lot of other grid operators in the country.
Good morning. This is Andrew Moore with Kins 5 News.
Good morning,
Sonia.
Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning. Are there still concerns that the state won't have enough dispatchable energy this summer? And do you expect multiple conservation notices this summer, depending on what the wind is doing?
So there's not an active concern or a high probability concern of not having enough dispatchable generation. What we talked about when we discussed the seasonal assessment of resource adequacy, the SARA report for this summer, was that there were some very low probability scenarios where during very high peak demand periods and very low available renewable resource periods, that there could be a shortage of dispatchable generation. But as I've talked about before, continuing to find ways to invest and develop dispatchable generation in Texas is very important, has been a subject of a lot of conversations and will continue to be for the next several years. But we do believe that we have enough resources to operate the grid reliably this summer and still expect that to be the case. To your point, to your question on, do we expect many conservation notices? No, we don't expect many conservation notices. What we do expect is, to be able to help keep folks more informed. We would be using the weather watch more frequently than we would ever use, a conservation notice. We would only go to a conservation notice if we get to a point where we've utilized most of our ancillary services and we find ourselves at a point where we want to take a little extra precaution and try to prevent things from getting worse. And so we would ask at that point. But we don't expect a lot of conservation notices at this point.
The Texas Tribune. We've been focused on the legislative session, as I know you have too, and I'm wondering if any of those proposals are going to start implementing, or if you could just speak to the timeline of changes they made and what effect they have on reliability in the, when you expect to start seeing reliability.
So it was a very active legislative session, as everybody followed. We are still going through the legislation that passed out of session. We expect to continue to, review and analyze the impact that that's going to have on the grid over the next several days, and we'll share more feedback on that as we have a better understanding of exactly what you're asking about, the timeline, how the various pieces and parts work together. We're not at a place where we're ready to discuss that in any detail right now, but I can tell you that, we share the same goal that the legislature does, which is to continue to support a reliable and stable grid now and long term into the future. And we'll continue to work closely with the legislature to enact what they passed this session, and we'll share more details as to what those different impacts will be as we have an opportunity to go through the details of the bills.
Matt Houston at WFAA in Dallas.
Good morning, Matt.
I know that planned maintenance outages were a problem last year because it got so hot so early. Fortunately, that's not been the case this year. So are you confident that generators have had an opportunity to catch up on the maintenance that they had to delay last year?
Yeah, we've seen a real active outage maintenance season this spring, and just as you noted, it's tailing off now as we get into the end of May and the start of June. So the generators have been taking a lot of their planned outages. We're seeing the maintenance activity that we expected to see. There was ample slots available for generators to utilize. So we feel we're in good shape now coming into the summer, and we're seeing the planned outages down at levels that we expect for this time of year.
With Univision Channel 45 in Houston.
Good morning, David.
Good morning. I was wondering if you speak Spanish, and maybe you can address about the plan that you are about to implement. A few words, if you can.
I appreciate the question. I'd rather prepare that so that it's a little better structured. My Spanish speaking skills ended when I was around 11 years old, is when I left South America. And so my business vernacular is that of somebody who was around 11. So translating this quickly into Spanish may not be the most effective thing for your audience, but what we will do is we do plan to release the information on the Texans website in Spanish as well, and provide updates and information in Spanish so that all of the Spanish-speaking Texans will have access to it and be able to understand what we're communicating. But we'll follow up closely on that, okay?
Actually, that was also one of my questions. When is that information going to be available in Spanish?
Very soon. We're working on that right now and expect to have that out in a matter of days or weeks. So very soon.
Are you able to hear me?
Yep, we sure are.
Okay. You mentioned something about new resources coming onto the grid, and I know some of the legislation that the legislature has passed is trying to incentivize that. Do you know of an interest in new detachable energy wanting to come onto the grid right now, and to help it make it more reliable?
So we manage and maintain a queue of interconnection requests onto the ERCOT grid, and that queue has tens of thousands of megawatts of different types of generating resources that have submitted an interest. Now, when somebody submits an interest, it doesn't mean that they necessarily are going to build or develop those resources. So what we have to do is watch those resources as they proceed through the various steps required in order to actually get to building an actual power plant. Right now, the majority of the resources that we see coming onto the grid tend to be in the renewable space. So we see a lot of solar development. We're also seeing a lot of battery development happening. And that tends to be what we see moving through that interconnection queue more rapidly, more so than dispatchable generation right now. But we'll have to see, based on the results of the recent legislation, how those things change. And we'll keep you all informed as we see new resources showing an interest, as well as actually starting to develop new facilities.
Sorry.
Good. Good morning.
Tom Kleckner, RTO Insider. Question about
How are you, Tom?
Fine. Question about the PCM, the bridge to the PCM as well. Where does all that stand right now following the legislative session?
So, Tom, we're still trying to take a look at all of the specific elements of the market design provisions that are in the pieces of legislation that passed. We'll need to, work through with the Public Utility Commission any bridge ideas if we were to move forward with bridge ideas, but we really have to look at it as a portfolio, because there was quite a lot of pieces and parts to the various legislation that came out, and so we really need to understand how they will all work together, the timing of them, how they will work together. So we're still evaluating that right now, Tom. We expect to have a better understanding in the coming days, and then when we can share that publicly, like we often do in our open board meetings, we'll talk about what our expectations and conclusions are from that, and what our next steps are going to be.
Buckley with the Houston Chronicle.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my question. Even though a lot of energy experts say demand response functions are important, the word conservation, even with the caveat of voluntary, can cause concern among residents. Besides talking with us today, is there a plan for specifically helping that a voluntary conservation
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and it is something that is so important to try to convey, regularly to all consumers and all Texans, and that is that conservation requests are a normal part of life. It doesn't happen only in the electric industry; it happens in a lot of industries. And when ERCOT talks about what's happening on the grid, we want to just help people be aware and informed of what's going on. We want to be more transparent. We want to be more open, get people more comfortable with hearing from us under conditions that are not emergency conditions. All of the new notices that we are releasing at this point, the weather watch as well as the voluntary conservation, are at times when the grid is in stable and normal conditions and that we're not in an emergency. And so we're going to do our best to try to communicate that through multiple channels. We're going to put information on the Texans website as well as the ERCOT website on ways that people can manage their energy use under any conditions, under regular, normal conditions, because that's something that people like to do in order to help save money and to help be efficient with their energy use. And so it's a really important message to get out. This is just part about wanting to be more open, to be more clear and transparent, help people understand what's going on, just like people like to understand what's going on with the weather. We want people to understand how weather and factors like that influence what's going on the grid. So I think we're getting close here to the end. We're going to need to take just one more question. So we'll open up for one last question and then we'll wrap here.
Hi, this is Heather Sullivan with Fox 26 in Houston.
Hi, Heather.
I was just wondering if you could either show us or paint a picture of what some of these notices might look like if we are seeing an issue. Like the examples you showed, everything is good. What will it look like if we're starting to have a problem?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think about it, almost like an analogy when you're on a weather forecast, when they're predicting in a few days there might be some severe weather and a risk of perhaps a potential risk of a tornado or something, some kind of severe weather. They would start that notification several days in advance and say, hey, we see the potential for this. The signs are probable for it. And that's what we would be doing similarly. We look at weather a little bit differently at ERCOT. We look at, the heat and the cold in the traditional sense, but we look at it in combination with how the wind is going to blow, how the sun is going to be shining at a particular time, as well as a lot of other factors in terms of how generation resources are working. And so what we would do is several days in advance is we would let people know conditions are ripe, where there could be, circumstances where things could get tight on the grid. We want to just let people know, just like a weather forecaster would let you know, hey, conditions are ripe where there could be severe weather down the road. And so they give you a heads up. And so that's what a weather watch would be. We'd be giving folks a heads up. Keep an ear out for more information. If you're interested, sign up for an email update from this website, and we'll let you know if conditions change. And then as we get closer to that point in time, and we would try to explain what's driving the conditions. We're expecting a very hot weather, we're expecting very cold weather, we're expecting very low renewable performance for a particular day coupled with hot weather. We would try to be clear as kind of why we're issuing a weather watch. And then as we get closer, we would give them an update on, yep, we're still in a weather watch and here's why. And if we ever did get to a place where we said, hey, we need to ask for voluntary conservation, we would be clear for the specific times we're asking that for. We would help point them towards resources that would help them save energy and reduce energy usage. So we try to be as helpful as we can in these communications. But again, always emphasizing we're doing this at a time when the grid is reliable and stable, but we're wanting to keep them informed and have them aware just in case conditions were to change. And so that's what it would look like. And we'll get practice as we go through this coming summer and this coming winter. And this will be a continuous improvement process for us as well. And we're going to try to do this to be helpful and again, to try to be as open and transparent as we can. So again, thank you so much for the interest today. I really appreciate everybody's questions and engaging in the conversation. I want to close by emphasizing that, ERCOT remains committed to keeping all Texans informed. I believe that if we work together, we can continue to move forward in a positive direction to keep all stakeholders engaged and informed about grid conditions through our new Texans platform. I encourage you to visit the new website at www.ercot.com/TXANS to learn more. And last, I ask if you can share the Texans messaging and updates to your audiences. And please reach out to our team at our media@ercot.com if you have any further questions about this. Thank you very much and have a great day.